So the Michigan Right to Farm Act is an act that was legislatively put into place in 1981. The intention behind the Right to Farm Act in Michigan was to protect farms in rural areas from urban sprawl. People were moving out to the country and building houses, and then they would complain about farming activities and smells. So the Michigan Department of Agriculture decided that there needed to be a law in place to protect farms from these nuisance complaints, and that's where the Michigan Right to Farm Act was born. I'm Randy Buechler of Shady Farm UP in Forsyth Township in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. We've got a 6.5 acre piece of property, and we utilize about 2 acres for our intensive permaculture system that we've got in place. About 2002 is when we started to grow, garden, and produce food here on Shady Grove Farm. Around that same time, we got 25 chickens. I was working away from home doing tree trimming along the power lines, and we kept adding things every year, a little bit here, a little bit there, to become more independent in our food production. In 2008, I sustained a spine injury at work, which rendered me disabled, and I was unable to continue working any longer doing that job. I needed something to do to keep me moving after my spine surgery so that I didn't become more disabled. I knew that activity was going to keep me healthy and help me heal from my injury. So we added some more things around the farm. We got a few sheep because Libby spins yarn and knitted sweaters and so on. So at the time we had probably about 75 chickens and 8 sheep, and then the next year we increased our chicken flock to about 100 chickens. Things were coming together nicely for our little permaculture system, and it was giving me something to do daily, getting me exercise and helping me heal from my injury and my spine surgery. And all of a sudden in 2009, I get the mail, and there's a letter in the mailbox, and it was from Forsyth Township. And when I opened the letter, I was kind of in disbelief because the letter said we needed to get rid of our chickens and goats, and I had to correct them, let them know we didn't have goats, we had sheep. We're zoned Lake Residential, which is the highest tax district within the township, and that agricultural activity was not a permissible or conditional use in the Lake Residentially Zoned District, and that we needed to cease and desist all agricultural activity. And I was just like, that's not going to work for us. This is not just a hobby, it was a way of life, and immediately I had to start figuring out what to do. My first course of action obviously had to be to respond to the township. I asked them, for a copy of the complaint that they received, and they said there wasn't a complaint. So through FOIA, I requested documents, and I ended up getting what was a complaint on a complaint form, but they told me it was actually just an inquiry. They just happened to put it on a complaint form, which made it a formal complaint. We ended up attending some township meetings and tried to discuss it with them and how we could go about continuing to live our way of life without being the nuisance that they were claiming that we were, because there really weren't any neighbor complaints or anything. Through the course of several months and back and forth with the township, I could kind of tell that it wasn't going anywhere, and they really weren't interested in compromising with me or making any changes to zoning to allow people to live in a self-sufficient manner regardless of zoning. It was more about me conforming to their outdated zoning ordinance, and I didn't think that that was right. I felt like there had to be a way that we were protected in what we were doing. So I literally did hundreds of hours of research trying to figure out how I could protect us and continue to be able to have some chickens and some sheep and grow food in our gardens and greenhouses. And I ended up stumbling across the Michigan Right to Farm Act. When I started reading that, there was an amendment that happened in 1999, and it became effective June 1st of the year 2000. It was crucial in our lawsuit. And that amendment reads, beginning June 1st, 2000, except as otherwise provided in this section, it is the express legislative intent that this act preempt any local ordinance, and the act is regarding the Michigan Right to Farm Act. So, that this act preempt any local ordinance, regulation, or resolution that purports to extend or revise in any manner the provisions of this act or generally accepted agricultural and management practices developed under this act. Except as otherwise provided in this section, a local unit of government shall not enact, maintain, or enforce an ordinance, regulation, or resolution that conflicts in any manner with this act or generally accepted agricultural and management practices developed under this act. So what that told me was there was protection for us regardless of zoning, because our zoning ordinance was in direct conflict with the Michigan Right to Farm Act, which is a state law. So now I had to figure out how to utilize that tool and make them understand that we were protected by state law, which trumps the local zoning. The closest neighbor here just happened to be a middle school science teacher, and she made it a point to have her class come and do water testing of our lake to prove that there was absolutely zero harm being done by our agricultural activity. And another thing that we did to prove what she had proven scientifically was the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development has a program called the MEAP program, which is the Michigan Agricultural Environmental Assurance Program. And what that program does is it brings, number one, the local conservation district in. They do a farm assessment. They tell you what you need to do to improve certain aspects of your farm to be compliant with their generally accepted agricultural management practices that fall under the state right to farm policies. And the MEAP verifiers come to your farm and do a visit and a walkthrough. And then they check all the different aspects of your farming operation, from a manure management plan, an odor management plan, water usage, environmental impact, your livestock operation. After having 2 MEAP verifiers here after the inspection, which took a couple hours, we went in and sat down at my kitchen table, and he told us that we were beyond compliant with anything that applied to our farm as far as the state of Michigan Agriculture Department went. And he shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, you now have right to farm protection." That kind of sealed the deal for us in my mind, because he just basically told me we had right to farm protection, and that's what I needed to know in order to feel confident going into the courtroom in November of 2012. There's a lot of steps aside from just starting seeds and putting transplants in the ground and getting some chickens and collecting eggs. There's a whole nother side of farming that I knew nothing about, and I can't stress enough how important it is to at least have some knowledge about it, or have some resources which the Michigan Small Farm Council can provide. So I continued to dig for hours and hours, and I ended up coming across the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. It's a national organization with a board of directors and a team of lawyers that protects small farms throughout the country that are having issues similar to ours. And after talking to the president for about 10 or 15 minutes on the phone and describing our situation, he didn't seem to have any doubts that the Right to Farm Act would protect us in this situation. I think it only took a few days, and Pete reached back out to me and he said that they had agreed to take our case. And so I ended up being assigned an attorney out of Ann Arbor named Steve Bemis. I was able to get a local attorney on board named Michelle Holly. So we had 2 Michigan attorneys that were also supported by a whole team of attorneys nationally through the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. Now, I've presented the Michigan Right to Farm Act to our township. I've gone to several meetings. I've tried to compromise with them. In the midst of all of this, my wife and I participated in actively starting our Gwynn Farmers Market in our community, trying to do good things within a community that was somewhat of a food desert. I had this Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund thing in my back pocket as a last resource that I was hoping to not have to use. I couldn't get the township to understand that, we didn't want to have to go to court or anything, that it seemed obvious this Right to Farm Act protected us, and we could totally avoid a court case if we could just work together and change the zoning to allow some agricultural activity in all zone districts. And they wouldn't go for it. Finally, the attorney said at one of the meetings that the Buchlers have left them no other course of action than to take us to court. They decided to file suit against us, and little did they know I had a whole team of lawyers that had already agreed to take our case. So that set the stage for a Michigan Right to Farm Act lawsuit, Forsyth Township versus Shady Grove Farm UP. This trial took place in the Marquette County Circuit Court, November 21st and 22nd, I believe it was, 2012, under Judge Solka. And it was a 2-day trial that was pretty intense, anxiety causing. It had been a long road getting to where we were. but I felt really confident with the Right to Farm Act and having the team of lawyers that we had, and our township, I think, was actually caught by surprise because I was told what was said by one of the board members at a meeting that we weren't at was, let's just take the Buchlers to court, they don't have any money, they can't fight this. Well, I didn't need the money, I needed knowledge and resources, and I found everything that I needed. And the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund successfully defended us in the Marquette County Circuit Court. We were the first farm to win a Michigan Right to Farm case at the Circuit Court level in Michigan. That ended up resulting in Forsyth Township also having to pay a high percentage of our attorney fees, and what they didn't have to pay, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund picked up the bill. So essentially, our lawsuit cost us $0 in attorney fees, but it did cost me probably a handful of years off my life in stress. But it was a priceless education that I received, and one of the things that it sparked was the interest to have kind of a grassroots watchdog for small farms in Michigan. And myself and 6 other people then founded the Michigan Small Farm Council, and we are a volunteer organization. We've been active in advocating for small farm rights since 2012. So, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we've made a lot of progress, and I encourage anybody that is a small farmer, regardless of zoning, to join the Michigan Small Farm Council. It's free to join, and if you become a member of the Small Farm Council, it opens the door to a priceless array of resources. When a governmental body wants to come after you, it will take everything you have to try to defend what you've built. I can't stress enough the importance of being prepared for that. We just need to continue to fight for our rights, and together I think we can maintain our Michigan right to farm.